Hey guys, Sean here and welcome to the F1 Word. Now the brand new F1 season is just a couple of weeks away now and a lot, understatement of the year, has happened since the checkered flag fell in Abu Dhabi in November. So, as apparently I now do every year, I'm going to run through some of the big winter stories and some of the info you might need to know ahead of the 2024 F1 season. Now, usually during the off-season, things are pretty quiet when it comes to F1 news, and sites have to rely on Ralf Schumacher or Jacques Villeneuve saying something super edgy so they get their clicks. However, 2024 has been insane, and it's not even the end of February yet, so in case you missed it or need a recap, here is a quick-ish summary of the main winter headlines. First up, Gunther Steiner is no longer at Haas after it was announced in January that his contract was not going to be renewed, a contract that actually expired at the end of 2023, with Gene Haas saying, quote, "Moving forward, it was clear we needed to improve our on-track performances," adding, "We need to be consistent in delivering results that help us reach our wider goals as an organisation." Steiner's position will be filled by the team's now former Director of Engineering, Ao Komatsu. And on the subject of team principles, it should also be said that Christian Horner is still under investigation by Red Bull after a complaint of inappropriate behaviour was made against him. At time of recording, though, there has been no official word on any decision or conclusion. Two teams announced their new names for this season. They are both absolute bangers in the same way that I'm mega rich and super handsome. Anyway, weird. The team previously known as Alfa Romeo Sauber will now be called Stake F1 Team Kick Sauber, and the AlphaTauri name has also disappeared with the team now known as Visa Cash App RB. For the record, I think most people will just call them Sauber and RB for the most part. It was announced that Lando Norris has signed a multi-year contract extension at McLaren, and although reports on the exact length vary, we do know he is set to drive for the team beyond the end of the 2025 season. Charles Leclerc also extended his stay at Ferrari, but again, we don't know exactly how long that deal is for, with the team saying he will be with them beyond the end of the 2024 season, or perhaps it's safer to say on both counts should be staying with their respective teams, because, well, I'll get to that in a second. It was officially confirmed after many months of speculation that the Spanish Grand Prix will be moving to a new venue from 2026, and that new venue is a part street, part purpose-built track in Madrid, because if there's one thing us F1 fans can agree on, it's that we are all desperate for more soulless street tracks on the F1 calendar. In case you didn't catch it, that was sarcasm. Andretti's bid to join the grid was formally rejected by Formula One management because, among other reasons, the commercial rights holder does not believe Andretti would add value to the grid or be a competitive participant. The sport, though, has left the door open for a possible entry in 2028 for a team with a General Motors power unit, either as a GM Works team or as a GM customer team, after they've all signed a nice new Concord agreement and sent the entry fee for new teams through the roof. I'm sure that has nothing to do with it whatsoever. Anyway, FOM also claimed that Andretti failed to respond to an invite for a face-to-face meeting between the two parties, with it later being reported that the said invite dropped into the Andretti spam folder and they never saw it, but they would still like to engage in talks with F1. Andretti has, though, said that their work continues at pace and they are proud of the progress they have already made on developing a car and power unit. And finally, for the winter wrap-up, despite signing a new 2-year deal with Mercedes in August last year, Lewis Hamilton is leaving the Silver Arrows at the end of this season and will race for Ferrari alongside Charles Leclerc in 2025, Hamilton agreeing a multi-year deal with the Scuderia. That means Carlos Sainz is now obviously looking for a race seat for next year and beyond, and Mercedes needs a Hamilton replacement. One thing is for sure, this year's silly season is going to be bonkers. And that's a good job really, given how static last year's was. In fact, 2024 will be the first year there are no changes to the driver lineups from the end of the previous season. Therefore, this list will not come as much of a surprise to many of you, so I'm going to be super quick with it. Reigning world champion Max Verstappen will still be at Red Bull and is once again joined by Sergio Perez. Lewis Hamilton will be at Mercedes for one final season with George Russell once again alongside him. And Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz remain at Ferrari for one final year together. It is Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri at McLaren for 2024. Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll at Aston Martin, and Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon are still together at Alpine. Williams confirmed they were sticking with Logan Sargent for 2024 at the start of December last year, with Alex Albon alongside him for another season. RB have Daniel Ricciardo and Yuki Tsunoda. Sauber kept Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu, and has decided to stick with Nico Hülkenberg and Kevin Magnussen. Whilst the grid has stayed largely the same this year, what's interesting about all those names, though, is the number of them that are out of contract at the end of this year, and they are officially Perez, Sainz, Alonso, Gasly, Ocon, Magnussen, Hülkenberg, Sargent, Ricciardo, Tsunoda, Bottas, and Zhou. Possibly Stroll too, but nobody knows when his contract expires, so maybe not. It is also worth bearing in mind that some of those drivers could have 1-year options with their current teams, but like I say, those are the official expiry dates, if you like, as I sit here and record this today. We've now seen all 10 cars in their launch spec at least, and all the liveries teams will be running this season. I use the word liveries very loosely in some cases. And yes, I am focusing on liveries in this part because even the teams who launch their real cars will inevitably make changes before testing and the first race. So I personally don't really think there's a lot of point playing spot the difference between 2023 and 2024 cars. Plus, as I'm sure most of you know by now, I have no idea what I'm talking about really when it comes to all that stuff, so I just make myself look very, very stupid. So let's just roll on. Haas revealed their exposed carbon car with accents of colour on February 2nd. That was followed by Williams on Monday the 5th, as they unveiled an evolution of the livery they've run for the last couple of years. Steak with peppercorn sauce, Sauber pulled the covers off their carbon car with accents of colour, and although I'm not a huge fan, one thing is for sure, you are not going to miss it when you're watching on TV, so fair play to them there. Alpine revealed their exposed carbon car with accents of colour on February 7th and boasted rather hilariously two different looks, with the blue featuring at most races, but the pink will be seen at 8 weekends this year. Toro, Alfa, Visa, Rosso, Tauri, Cash App, RB, Minardi painted most of their car with a look that is very reminiscent of the lovely Toro Rosso paint job they used to run. It's not perfect or quite as good, but I do still really like it. Aston Martin kicked launch week number 2 off with a mostly painted car in the colours we've come to expect since the team was rebranded. Ferrari launched, brace yourself, a red car on February 13th, and it is, in my opinion at least, the best looking of the bunch. I love the addition of the yellow stripes, and yes, I am massively biased. Mercedes and McLaren both officially launched on Valentine's Day with the silver arrow showing off a really smart looking livery in a car that a lot of people seem to be getting quite excited about, on Twittex at least. McLaren, who actually showed off their livery in January, have removed all the blue and gone with papaya and carbon as their look for 2024. And last up were champions Red Bull, who, as you'd expect, stuck with their usual livery for the RB20, but took a lot of people by surprise with their apparent change in car philosophy in some areas. I cannot wait to see what they roll out with during testing and at that first race of the season. With launches out of the way, it is on to pre-season testing before the season gets going, and once again, the winter test will be held in Bahrain. The 3-day test starts on Wednesday, February 21st. If you're watching this video when it goes out, that is tomorrow. And each day session will start at 7 a.m. GMT. You will be able to watch testing live, but if you don't want to listen to Crofty & Co, then you can come and listen to me and Stuart waffling away on this channel from 11 a.m. UK time until the checkered flag falls every day of testing. And oh wow, will we waffle. Hope to see plenty of you there. Oh, and if it's your kind of thing, Drive to Survive Season 6 starts on Friday, February 23rd on Netflix. Once testing is all out of the way, it'll be time to go racing once again. As has been the case over the last few years, the season will start in Bahrain with a back-to-back with Saudi Arabia, but those weekends will be a little different, with both races taking place on Saturday, March 2nd and Saturday, March 9th, respectively. That means, and a heads up, qualifying will be on the Fridays of those race weekends and practice on the Thursdays. The other standout dates for 2024 include Japan, which has been moved from its traditional October date to April. China returns for the first time since 2019 on April 21st with the European leg, minus a brief stop in Canada starting at Imola on May 19th. The summer break starts after the race in Belgium on July 28th, with the season restarting at Zandvoort on August 25th. The race in Baku has moved to September, and after the race in Singapore on September 22nd, there is a month's break before the triple header of the US, Mexico and Brazil race weekends. There is then another break before F1 returns to Vegas on November 23rd, and the start of a season-ending triple header consisting of Vegas, Qatar and Abu Dhabi, which, as always, closes the season on December 8th. So a packed second half of the year, but I've got to say a little bit stop-start in places. That is, as a reminder, by the way, a record-breaking 24-race season. That's 30 races if we include the sprints. The sprint races will be held at 6 venues again this year, and they are China, a track we haven't been to since 2019. So that could be very interesting with just the one practice session that weekend. China is joined by Miami, Austria, Austin, Sao Paulo and Qatar as sprint hosts. Now, the weekend formats for sprints will change in 2024 pending World Motorsport Council approval, which should be a formality given it was all agreed by FOM and the FIA. So from this season, sprint weekends will start with a single practice session on, let's say, Friday morning, but the first session on a Friday, you know what I mean by that, and that will now be followed by sprint qualifying on Friday afternoon. The sprint race will take place on Saturday morning ahead of Grand Prix qualifying on Saturday afternoon, the main race, of course, still taking place on Sunday. Honestly, a much better schedule in my opinion. I think it'll just give us a much nicer flow to the weekend. It also means that each session becomes more meaningful as the weekend progresses, as it builds to the crescendo that is Sunday's Grand Prix. I think it'll work well. It is also worth a mention that although it hasn't been officially announced at time of recording, it is also expected there will be 2 Parc Ferme periods across a sprint weekend, with the first kicking in once the cars leave the garage for sprint quali and ending after the sprint race, with the second starting in Grand Prix qualifying. It means teams will be able to make changes to setups and things like that between the end of the sprint race and Grand Prix qualifying. There are also some tweaks to some existing rules this season, again pending approval from the World Motorsport Council. Firstly, there will be changes to when DRS is made available during all races. Usually, DRS would be switched on, if you like, after the second lap of a Grand Prix. However, from this season, DRS will be made available to drivers within 1 second of the car ahead from the end of the first lap from the race start or after a safety car period. Last season, teams were allowed to use 4 of each of the internal combustion engine, MGUH, MGUK, and turbocharger before being slapped with a penalty. Those limits were due to return to 3 this year, but the F1 Commission agreed to increase the limit for each of those components back to 4 for this season as well as in 2025. So, that is 4 of each of those components. And do you know what else F1 cars have 4 of? That's right, tyres. Oh yes, for the first time in 2024, and maybe the last time, who knows, it's tyre talk time. Let's not do this again, please. This season, we say goodbye to the hardest C0 compound as Pirelli returns to a C1 to C5 range, and those compounds will be the same as in 2023, as the FIA and the manufacturer chose late last year not to introduce new ones for the upcoming season. So it is C1 to C5, and for anyone new to F1, the C1 tyre is the hardest in the Pirelli range, and the C5 is the softest. There have also been changes to the right of review process, with teams now having to lodge an appeal within 4 days or 96 hours rather than the previous 14 days, and will now also have to pay a deposit, which they will only get back if their appeal is successful or if the FIA decides it should be returned to the teams. And whilst there are other tweaks and additions to the rules, including, for example, cooling scoots being fitted to the cars in hot conditions to keep drivers, well, cool, the bulk of the regulations remain the same as they did last year. That is it then for this one, but you can let me know your thoughts ahead of the new F1 season in the comments section down below. And if you're watching this as it goes out, we are less than 2 weeks away from Lights Out in Bahrain. I cannot wait. Oh, I love my F1, which is probably a good thing given I've got an F1 related YouTube channel. But anyway, I will be back live on Wednesday. That's tomorrow if you're watching this, it goes out, with the first testing stream of 2024. And again, we'll be live with timing, updates and chat every day from 11 AM GMT until that checkered flag falls at the end of each day. In the meantime, though, if you did enjoy this one, then please do leave a like and do consider subscribing as well to help me and the channel in its never-ending battle with the YouTube algorithm. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean, this has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.